Okay, so I wanted to welcome everybody to this, and we're going to, first of all, my name is Andrew Morrison. I'm going to be moderating this, and I wanted to, first of all, welcome you to this virtual speaker series, and it's our first presentation. Very glad that everybody's here. While people are coming in, I'm going to give a very brief introduction to the Acoustical Society of America, the International Year of Sound, and then I'll introduce our speaker today and turn you over, or turn it over to her. But before I forget, I very much want to give a round of thanks and applause and just credit to the Acoustical Society of America's Outreach and Education Coordinator, Keita Jones, who is set all this up and is also going to be helping out today. All right, so let's see if I can get this. All right, so first a little bit about the Acoustical Society of America. The Acoustical Society is the world's largest organization that is dedicated to supporting researchers and practitioners in the field of acoustics. And I've been a part of the Acoustical Society for many years. The mission of the Acoustical Society is to generate, disseminate, and promote the knowledge and practical applications of acoustics. It's organized into 13 different technical committees. There's one specialty group, and there's just a lot of different other committees that help support the researchers and scientists and practitioners that are involved in acoustics. And so I want to tell you a little bit about each of the technical committees and show you sort of screenshots of their websites so you can get an idea of the different things that happens in the ASA. So first is the Acoustical Oceanography Technical Committee, and this technical committee is interested in using sound to understand what happens in the ocean from all sorts of different perspectives. So that's interesting. I'll come back at the end. There's another technical committee that seems similar to this. Then there's the Animal Bioacoustics Technical Committee, which looks at how do animals produce sound and what can we learn about animals from the sounds that they produce, or how do we use sound to study animals. This technical committee, you often will, there'll be a lot of work done with bats or whales or dolphins or frogs or birds. So a lot of really interesting stuff happens here. The technical committee on architectural acoustics is interested in how does sound interact inside buildings. So how can we design concert halls or auditoriums or classrooms to have the optimal sound for those different types of spaces. The technical committee on engineering acoustics is interested in how do transducers work and how do we design new transducers. So different types of microphones or different types of loudspeakers are what they are mostly concerned with. Then there's my favorite, which is the technical committee on musical acoustics, which touches on all things related to musical sound. But one of the primary things that this technical committee does is it looks at the physics of musical instruments and how do musical instruments produce their characteristic unique sounds. The technical committee on noise is interested in the production of undesirable sounds and how can we mitigate or minimize those different types of undesirable sounds. The physical acoustics technical committee is dedicated to looking at how does sound behave once it is propagating away from its source. So how does sound interact with different the media, or if it interferes with other sound waves and so on and so forth. So the physics of sound wave propagation. Then there's signal processing in acoustics, which is a technical committee that really supports a lot of the other technical committees and figures out what to do with measurements and taking acoustical measurements, whether it's sound measurements or vibration measurements, and figuring out how to extract meaningful information from the signal. So especially if it's very quiet, or if it's in a noisy environment, you know, we can use signal processing techniques to get useful information out of those signals. Structural acoustics and vibration technical committee looks at how do structures behave, how do they vibrate to produce the sounds. So then the sounds that are produced eventually will radiate, the sound radiates away from the structure, but this technical committee looks at how the sounds initially produced by the behavior of the structure and the vibration that causes the sound. Then underwater acoustics is, this is the last graphic that I have, is interested in how does sound behave underwater. So the first one that I was talking about was acoustical oceanography, which looks at what can we learn by using sound, and then this is how does sound behave underwater. So it's very, very interesting stuff. There are a couple other technical committees I want to mention. There's a technical committee on speech communication, which looks at how does it's the acoustics of human speech and things related to that. And then there's the technical committee on psychological and physiological acoustics, which is all about the perception of sound and the physiological aspects related to sound. Then we have a technical specialty group on computational acoustics, which is brand new and is interested in using computational methods to study acoustics. And I very much want to mention the committee on education and acoustics, which is dedicated to finding and promoting the best ways for teaching and learning acoustics at all levels, starting from elementary school all the way up through graduate school education. So one of the projects of the Education and Acoustics Committee is the Explore Sound website. So if you haven't seen this, I encourage you to go to exploresound.org and check it out. There's a ton of resources there. And you know, again, for all ages and all educators and parents and teachers and students and everybody should check this out. And then I mentioned the International Year of Sound. This is the International Year of Sound, which is it's an international effort to promote sound. Because of the global pandemic, we're extending this through 2021, and it's part of this effort, which is bringing us this virtual speaker series. And so we're really glad that this could be a part of the International Year of Sound. So a little bit of housekeeping about today's talk. The recording of today's talk will be posted on the ASA YouTube channel. We're going to save some time at the end for questions and answers. Keita and I will be monitoring the chat, and if there's a Q&A part, we'll just, or place, we'll be monitoring that. So feel free to put your questions in there, and we'll do that at the end. So now I feel like I've talked way more than I really wanted to, but I'm super excited to introduce our speaker today. I've been following the OK Go Sandbox project for a while, and I think it's a really cool thing. And I'm super glad that we're here to get to hear from Dr. AnnMarie Thomas, who comes to us from the University of St. Thomas in St. Paul, Minnesota. And I don't want to take any more of her time, so I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Thomas. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrew. And thank you all for inviting me today. I have to say, I occasionally give talks, and the most fun talks to give are ones where you're asked to give a talk you've never given before. And it was interesting when Keita reached out about about the Year of Sound, that at first my thought was, but I don't do underwater acoustics anymore. This is a weird invite. And it's embarrassing to admit, I hadn't realized how many of the projects that my lab has done for the last 10 years involve sound. We never put them in that framing. So as I prepared the talk I'm going to give today, it was this joy of realizing, oh wait, we do music stuff. We do sound stuff. So I thank Keita and Andrew for giving me a chance to rethink the work that I do in a new way. And so I'm going to share a bunch of projects that my lab has worked on under the auspices of they all have something to do with sound, seeing sound, playing with sound, the lack of sound. And I have to admit that listening to Andrew's discussion of all of the different subgroups of the Acoustical Society, I'm sort of jealous. It's like a kid in a candy store. You guys have so many cool things and so many cool specialties among the group of you that I truly want you to consider this talk today as a invitation. As you're going to find out, much of the work that I do involves collaborations, and kind of my greatest joy is finding new collaborators. So let's see, hopefully we have the PowerPoint captions are happening. There we go. So if you see something or a project today that looks interesting to you or you have an idea with, truly, please feel free to reach out to me and send me an email or set up a Zoom chat. And I'd love to see ways that we could play together. So playing with sound, what does that mean to me? Well, I want to step back a little bit, and how did I get here? And you'll see some of this coming through, I think, in the work that I now do. I come to you live today from actually my office, which I haven't seen in a while, here in Minnesota, at the University of St. Thomas, where I'm a professor in the School of Engineering, in mechanical engineering, but also in the School of Business as an entrepreneurship professor, and then also with the School of Education, teaching how to teach design to K-12 teachers. But my path here was maybe a little bit unexpected. I had been a painting and music major in high school and did my undergraduate at MIT, where I was an ocean engineering major. So I spent a lot of time with waves, but they weren't sound waves at the time. It was looking at how we could do propellers and, how we could replace propellers for underwater robots. So I actually spent a few years studying propellers and a few years studying this thing on the right, which was creating synthetic jets for little robots, which basically looked like vortex rings. So imagine if someone blew a smoke ring. We were doing that underwater, but we were using speakers actually. In fact, as a grad student on a not so well-funded project, I remember I looked through trash piles to find speakers. And once I was so excited because someone put out a great audio speaker in a hallway. So I took it, I cut out the pieces. I think that might even be the one that you see in this setup on the right. And I was a little disheartened the next day when a graduate student sent out an email looking for his sound system that he had put in the hallway while he was cleaning his office. It became part of my research. Unfortunately, I apologize profusely. But from my time at Caltech, I'll admit that when I was there working on underwater propulsion systems, using sound systems, but more about the visual aspects, I was also sneaking off in my evenings to Art Center College of Design, where I was taking classes and also eventually teaching in product design and in their liberal arts classes. And this gave me a chance to see the work that I did as a roboticist through very different eyes. In fact, one of my favorite projects was this one that you see here. I was asked by a collaborative group in the city of Pasadena who did art evenings. They wanted to pull together a Caltech geologist and a sound artist named Steve Roden. And they wanted to create something based on earthquake sound. Caltech was known for their earthquake research, but they weren't sure how to do it. So they asked me as a graduate student who had some affiliation with Art Center if I could work with this team. And so this project is actually 16 years old and probably the first big sound installation I ever got to work on. And what we did was take data on the left here. This is the Hector Mine earthquake. And we turned it into a player piano score, essentially, but then had to build a structure that could play this data, play the earthquake data in a new way. And so over on the right, you see these little squares, and each of them is a single note from a child's xylophone with a motor on top and a washer, a little metal washer hanging that would bang into it when we triggered it. But my favorite part of the whole project was that Steve designed this thing in the middle, which was I think it was 30 foot by 16 foot by 8 feet tall wooden structure built based on a Corbusier lampshade. And we mounted all of the earthquake playing little mini robots on the roof of it. And you would go into this space and it would just resonate with this very pleasant, tinkly sound that was representing something really powerful. He wanted to do the antithesis of how we think of earthquake sounds. If you think of loud and rumbly and scary, and instead it was this very ethereal, tinkly little sound. And I'll never forget that schools would come and do field trips and visit it. And a teacher pulled us aside later and said that her children on the autism spectrum really loved this piece because a lot of them would put their hands on the wooden struts inside of the structure and they could feel the vibrations. And I had forgotten about this project, honestly. I haven't mentioned it in a talk in probably 5 years until I was putting together this talk on sound and realized that this project really was a turning point, filed away in my head for how we approach a lot of the future work. When I left California, I went to Minnesota. as many Minnesotans do. My husband was born in Minnesota and they all come back. So I've been in Minnesota here since 2006, teaching a lot of classes in design, but my kind of heart of hearts is this lab that I run. My research lab, the Playful Learning Lab, this summer employs over 30 students, but my students are all undergraduates. I'm super proud of our research lab in that we publish and we get funding and we do all the things that a university research lab should do, but I have no grad students and I have no professional staff. Instead, I have this incredibly enthusiastic crew of students, and this is just the summer crew that you're seeing here, but they come from 12 different majors. We usually have about a third of them are engineering or computer science, about a third are education or communications, and about a third are a mix of everything from business to music, to Spanish, to health and human performance. And so what we're going to do with the rest of this talk is show you some of the projects that we've been doing as a lab that have to do with sound. And the project that was our first foray into sound is kind of an unusual one. I have to share this XKCD cartoon. If any of you follow XKCD, it's a fantastic nerdy comic strip online. And this cartoon gets sent to me constantly by people. And I now understand why. I'll read it to you. This is an interdisciplinary program in which physics students try to hit psychology students with pendulums. And the subtext here is that my professors had an ongoing competition to get the weirdest thing taken seriously under the label interdisciplinary program. And I take great pride as a professor that I think I could win this competition at most places. Because for me to take on a project, there have to be 4 elements: joy, whimsy, surprise, and there have to be new people. There have to be a group of people I've never worked with. So the first project that we did as a lab, that we didn't even realize at the time was a project that would be the jumping off point for the lab, we didn't even call ourselves the Playful Learning Lab at the time, was a project that actually had to do more with physics and the equations of motion than sound at first. I was tasked with teaching a 4-week dynamics class during a term that students would normally have off, and how to come up with a way to make it interesting. I don't know if I succeeded, but what I ended up doing was pulling my hobby in. And I am a aerialist, flying trapeze amateur artist. And so we borrowed a circus school to teach this physics class. And what I want to show and why it fits in for today is it was our first collaboration with musicians, because we wanted a way to show people how we did this class, but we needed a way to convey it unusually. And so we hired the band Mighty Fairly to take the notes for dynamics and turn it into what I'm going to play for you now.
I think gravity's got me. I think gravity's got me. Oh no, please don't let go. All these restraints and requirements, rigid bodies won't.
Oh, I wonder why we cut off. Okay, well, you had sound. Huh. Uh-oh. I will share a video link later. You got a hint. My favorite part of that actually is that all of the lyrics are scientifically accurate. There are some wonderful lines in it. I'll make sure to share a link after this video. Star-crossed products meet in reference planes, and more like that. But the fun thing here was working with this band and seeing the way musicians looked at some of our work. So we filed that away. Check, let's work with musicians in the future. You'll see that about 10 years later, that came true with the band OK Go. But we also did a lot of work with restaurants. We were doing a project with the Alinea restaurant group in Chicago, a Michelin 3-star restaurant group. And our project there wasn't sound related, it was smell related. We were trying to help them analyze black and white truffles, which they spent a lot of money on. The best part of the project though, was that I met their chefs and the friends of the chefs and some pastry chefs. And I always wanted to work with a pastry chef on an unusual project. And I got my chance in a musical way when I was asked to speak in Denmark at a conference called the Factory of Imagination. And it turned out that it was a little kid in the audience's birthday. And so I decided to make some cupcakes. And I want you guys to watch this and see if you can figure out what's going on with these cupcakes.
Which cupcake would you like? Can you reach and grab a cupcake? Pick a cupcake. Wait. What did you do to my cupcake? Put it back. It doesn't play music for me. All right, try a different one. Poke it.
I then conducted him, and those cupcakes played Happy Birthday if he hit them in the right order. But I'm curious, you guys are watching. What do you think? Why was it playing, were the cupcakes playing music for him and not for me? Do you notice something different about him and me? And it's not the glasses or the hat. You can write it in the chat if you notice a difference between us. Anyone have a guess? Why were cupcakes playing music? Direction. Wasn't the direction. You in the back of the table. I actually didn't touch anything. I wasn't doing anything. Light balloon. The balloon! It turns out balloons with helium are considered very wasteful everywhere but the US. So we found the only place in Denmark that we could get one. And we had a special string on that balloon. And the balloon had a silver string. So he was actually grounding himself to the circuit by holding the balloon. And he was completing a circuit. I was using a makey board on the cake stand. So every single one of those cupcakes mapped to a note. And when he touched them with his hand, he was conducting through his balloon string and turned that into a musical instrument. It was quite fun. We also, at that, couldn't fly a pastry chef just for cupcakes. We also built a cake that exploded edible confetti and played music and lit up also. But this was fun in really getting people to think of things as instruments that they might not always consider instruments. So once you're the professor who teaches on a flying trapeze and also electrifies cupcakes, people start asking you really weird things, which is awesome and is the highlight of my career. And men's a cappella group here in Minnesota that some of you may have heard of, I don't know, called Contus, amazing group of male a cappella performers, reached out to me and said, could you do something to make our concerts interesting? That came out wrong. Could you do something to make our concerts unusual and maybe bring in some new people? And so I sat down with a crew of my students and we decided we would take this challenge on. So I went to meet them. I brought a makey and I beat the singers to the coffee shop. So they were very confused when they picked up their coffee spoons and they all played music. I'd also wired those to a makey. But we had to come up with something that we could bring with them easily to concerts. And we decided, what would it look like to see music instead of hear music? And I love time pressure. So my research students are incredibly brave. They've done a little bit of coding and I said, let's do a concert in 4 weeks for a couple hundred people. So we booked an auditorium for a couple hundred people and we decided that we had to figure out how to make Contus's music visible. And we did this through a piece of software that we call Code and Chord that's open source. I'll show you the website in a minute and share it. But it takes sound inputs, up to 12 at a time. And then using a GUI interface, graphic user interface, you can pick how those sounds are visualized. Are they circles? Are they squares? Do they spin if you change your pitch, or do they fade out if you change your volume? I just wanted to show you a few little early examples of this.
And then we can do a little slower.
Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. Row round the stream. Your boat merrily, 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 life is but a dream. Merrily, life is but a dream. Row your boat gently down the stream.
And over the next couple months, we got to try this with a whole bunch of different singing groups. This is the women's a cappella group, and a standard bar. We even tried to make our own kaleidoscope with sound. And through the software, we played with pictures. We did an amazing whirling dervish Sufi piece that we worked with some art scholars on to make sure that we were culturally sensitive in the shapes that were used. This has been a really fun way to see how people approach the visualization of music in an abstract way. We use it a lot with children for emotion. I just want to do one last little clip of this because I love this one. This one is as literal and on the nose as we can make things. It's 3 opera singers talking about colors. And the color is represented a pitch. So if we wanted something to be red when they sang red, we had to know what pitch they were singing then. And you'll notice at one point when they're all singing the same note, the rainbow is kind of boring because the colors will all go together. I love that one of the singers there on the left is actually also the lead programmer for this project. The joys of teaching at a liberal arts school. So Code and Chords, you are welcome to check out the website for this. We've shared all the code on GitHub, and maybe when I show websites later, I can show you that website. But we'd encourage you to play around with it if you have some suggestions. This is a project that we're not as actively using, but given the distance learning situation for a lot of schools, we're getting more and more inquiries from it. So I suspect that we'll be releasing some new tools and updates on it in the coming weeks and months. So that was a loud project. The project that is probably nearest and dearest to my heart at the university actually is much quieter. About 7 years ago, I had a research student come and apply to work on a project with Play-Doh. We have something called squishy circuits, where you can build working circuits. And this student on the lower left, this woman with the scarf around her neck, she said that her grandparents were deaf and that she had always wanted to do something in the deaf community. And that one conversation has turned into a program that now, 7 years later, we run weekly STEAM, science, technology, engineering, art, and math classes at Metro Deaf School, which is an incredible school here in the Twin Cities in Minnesota that has the largest number of deaf-blind children at a deaf school in the country, but also is about 40% refugees and first and second gen refugees. So we've been doing our engineering classes there in ASL with their children. That has then spread to working with the Minnesota State Academy for the Deaf. And I throw this project in, even though it is a quiet project, because you might have guessed, maybe you can guess why I'm throwing it in, is that we realized that there might be some overlap between that Code and Chords project you just saw and then our 7 years of work in the deaf community. We have a longstanding relationship with the PBS show Sci Girls, SCI Girls, Sci Girls. And they wanted to do an episode with some of my students as the mentors. And we realized that we had the opportunity to do something pretty special. We had the opportunity to do the first episode of Sci Girls in which the tween girls, are deaf and hard of hearing. And they actually wanted to use the Code and Chord software to teach these girls how to code, but then also have them think about what it would take to do a concert using Code and Chords for a deaf and hard of hearing audience. And I highly recommend this whole episode. We worked really closely with PBS and our deaf colleagues and interpreters. The entire episode is hard coded with color coded captions. But I want to show you a clip of this. Okay, so I have stopped my screen sharing. We'll give this a shot. Here we go, share screen. I'm gonna take my whole desktop. So for a moment, you're gonna see my whole desktop and let's give this a shot one more time. It worked when we tested it a moment ago. There we go. All right. Share screen with sound. There we go. All right, I just want to show you a clip of this.
With the University of St. Thomas students. It's critical that deaf people have the benefit of visual aids to understand music better, putting us on the same page as our hearing peers.
Thank you for coming. We hope you enjoy the show. And now we'd like to call to the stage the Cadenza Singers.
Through our project, I feel like we were able to express ourselves to a larger audience, allowing our audience to understand that deaf people can create things along with music as a way to communicate.
I feel like I'm ready for anything. I could teach my family, other people, and generations to come who have never done anything like this. So I see this being passed on.
So I have to say that is one of my favorite projects that we have done in a long time. A really neat thing about that is that we actually still work with those young women, and this was really a jumping off point for them to think about themselves as coders, themselves about having a relationship with music. I will note that the song that was being performed there at the end, and I'll share the episode later, I can send Andrew a link. The song that was being played is actually by Mandy Harvey, who is a deaf singer-songwriter. So that was sort of a lovely a lovely addition that we were able to do with PBS's help. All right, so, oops, apologies. That brings me to, I mentioned that if we started with circus, that was the first attempt at working with a band. I'm curious if any of you have ever heard of the band OK Go. Maybe in the chat you can tell me if you've heard of OK Go. And OK Go is an American rock band based in Chicago. Oh good, lots of people know OK Go. Their videos are incredible. I've been using their videos to teach in my engineering design classes for years and years. And 3 years ago, as you guys might have noticed, I've been sipping at my coffee while I talk. I was at a conference, and the last day I was grabbing a coffee, heading to the airport, and the gentleman in front of me in line was their lead singer, Damien, who had presented at the conference. And I told him how much I love their videos, and I've used them for my engineering classes, and he asked me what I do, and I said I do education work. And he said we should work together, leap of faith there on his part. And 3 weeks later, we gave a talk together. The longest conversation we ever had at that point was in front of 1,000 people, and we launched OK Go Sandbox that evening. And OK Go Sandbox is the education end of OK Go. Through this project, I'm going to show you the website in a second, we have been working with educators to create new videos and new teaching materials and activities and challenges for kids that are based on the music videos the band have created. This is an older iteration of the office I'm sitting in now. And the two women in the front are two teachers that were our earliest teachers on set. We always have a teacher when we film. And myself and Damien writing a script for our first video together. And this is sort of what it looked like. If you've seen the Rube Goldberg chain reaction video of theirs, we created our first pilot for OK Go Sandbox was teaching kids about simple machines and sound and teamwork through that video. We have since progressed. We have filmed, gosh, almost over 20 videos. I never thought I could put executive producer on my resume, but this was our goal. Our goal for this project, in Damien's words, was to give teachers whatever tools they need to connect the joy, wonder, and fun in our videos to the underlying concepts that their students are learning. And so how do we do that? Well, we did that through OK Go Sandbox. And I want to show you a short snippet of one of our projects. I cut down one of the videos to a smaller chunk to show you, and then I'll show you the website. I do want to say that my lab is not involved with the music videos. I take no credit for their amazing music videos. I do the part that my team does, the part that comes after. We sit down and figure out how to use them in a classroom. So let's talk about sound.
You don't really think of a lot of things as musical instruments that make pretty cool sounds. I mean, like, everything's got a different sound. Silence is a cool sound.
There's a lot of good sounds in this room. You guys want to find them?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. That crinkle is kind of nice.
I like that. It's kind of a grainy sound.
It is.
Now we're talking. Now we're talking. More bottom end move. It is a song.
I have to say, I think of all of my sandbox filming days, that was fun on the playground with the guys. And actually that was our Airbnb where they were filming that last little clip. One of the funny things is we premiered that video, Surrounding Sounds, at an education conference. And I noticed two people looking a little shocked in the audience. They came up afterwards and it turns out it was their house that we were filming in. They rented their house out through Airbnb and it turned into an OK Go video. So OK Go Sandbox. Let me just show you this website because I'm super excited to hear that some of you have actually already used these in some of your classes. If I go to share screen, here we go with sounds. All right, oh, this is a different project. Here's that Code and Chords website I mentioned, by the way, codeandchords.org. Again, getting started, information on how to use that software and the GitHub link. But OK Go Sandbox, if you go to okgosandbox.org, this is our big collaboration project. And in terms of of music. That's been obviously something the band wanted to have a lot of in our content. So if you go and play around on this site, there's a couple ways I should show that you can play around with it. You can go by music video if you're a fan of the bands, or you can filter and pick some topics. I'm gonna grab music and hope that it hits the ones I want. I'm gonna go show results, surrounding sounds. Clearly I need to go back in and change our filter because the one I wanted to show is now probably gonna come up under physics. Oh, here we go. Hit the note. So I shouldn't have favorites. One of the videos that I like very much is that chain reaction video that we discussed. I mentioned a little bit earlier. And my favorite part of that video is when they use tuned glasses to play some of the notes. So I want to show you how we turn this into an OK Go sandbox.
When we were thinking of ideas for this video, we thought it'd be so cool if we could actually make the machine play parts of the song.
Then one of the engineers we worked with came up with the idea of playing tuned glasses for part of the song.
Now, tuning the glasses to play the right notes was not as easy as it may sound. Sound consists of air molecules that are vibrating at various frequencies. What we recognize as musical notes are vibrations of air that are resonating at very specific frequencies. So, in order to play the musical note known as middle C, we need to tune whatever our instrument is until the vibration hits the correct frequency.
In order to tune glasses, we can add water. That lowers the frequency. If we don't add enough, we'll get a note that's too high. If we add too much, we'll get a note that's too low. We add and subtract water till we get the note we want.
To make sure that we've got the right pitch, there are a few different tools we can use to check our tuning. This is called a tuning fork. It's a metal fork. You see these two prongs, and when you bang those prongs, they vibrate at just the right frequency to make the note we want.
The other way is to use an electronic tuner. You might have an app on your phone that does that, or on your tablet.
For the music video, we had to have our glasses hit these notes from the song.
So each glass had to be tuned until it was perfect.
Now we've got a challenge for you. Make your own tuned glasses and play these notes from our song.
Did you get that? Here they are one more time.
Ready? Good luck.
And so we've broken down a lot of the elements of this video, the chain reactions, actually we even have a lesson where we talk about how hard it was for the guys to break it into 6-second chunks, and then we challenge students to do it, and it's got a little sound that they can download. For an example like this, Hit the Note, we then do have educator guides, student guides, and all the support needed for these. So that has been a fun foray. Like I said, never thought when I was getting a PhD working on underwater robots that I would be spending my time working with rock bands. But we never quite know how projects are going to work out. The last thing I want to share before we go to some Q&A, I'll bring back the PowerPoint. Let me turn on my captions this time. I apologize that I left those off before. This is the most back and forth I've ever done on a presentation, but I want to show things from the website when I can, since you know that those are ones you can go to easily later. Something interesting happened with OK Go, and I'm switching. You can see I switched the style of these slides.
My name is Maria.
Oops. Because
one of our
project, oh, and it's got sound on it. Well, I'm using my student slide here, but we had to come up with the challenge of how do we get kids interested in participating with the band in a way that we can scale, because lots of people wanted us to Skype or Zoom into classrooms of the band, and that wasn't really doable. So probably one of my favorite videos of OK Go's, one of them, is the one that they did in microgravity. And in microgravity, the guys filmed a whole music video. Well, that wasn't space though. Sometimes they've said that it was zero gravity. As you guys probably know, that wasn't zero gravity. It was microgravity. They were in a vomit comet doing parabolas. And we have OK Go Sandbox videos explaining how that worked. But we were given the chance by Blue Origin, Jeff Bezos's space company, to have 2 payloads on the New Shepard rocket that was going into space. And we were able to do what we wanted with them. They were tiny payloads. But my amazing team, again, these are all undergraduates, they put together a competition called Art in Space that OK Go launched last year in March, and challenged kids around the world to come up with an idea for an art experiment that can only happen in space. And they would beat OK Go to that because OK Go's music video wasn't technically in space. Well, we had entries from 28 different countries, from Kazakhstan to the US, to India to Australia. And the neat thing was the kids just had to have the idea, and we were going to be the ones that would build it for them. We ended up picking 2 payloads, one called Dark Origin, which was a magnet-based one that let glitter and other particles loose in the payload once they hit microgravity, and created 2 planets. But that's not the one I wanted to mention here. You're the Acoustic Society. So our second one was called Cosmic Song. And Cosmic Song was the idea of a young team from Utah that wanted to create the first electric guitar in space. And I'm just gonna show you what this looked like. I can share a paper later. But they put together an idea for a piece that would be launched.
In the end.
And I went faster, but I apologize because it had sound coming through, and I don't know why. We ended up using little balls that would float around in the payload, and each of those, when it went by a sensor, would trigger a string. So we did build a little, I think it ended up being only 3 strings because we had such tight weight requirements, but a 3-string device that went up in the payload and actually played. Now, again, being designed by some kids, they were more ambitious than that. So when every string is plucked, it also released some colored powder paint that would be flung through the payload onto a little canvas. So we think we have the first song created by an electric guitar in space. We could be wrong. But so that was launched in December on Blue Shepard, and probably the most ambitious instrument project that we've ever created. Thank you guys for listening to this. As you can see, my career and our lab's work has always been a little bit of found things. We never quite know what the next project is going to be. In fact, right now we're running a summer camp online called The Playground that has, as an intended audience, deaf children, so everything is in sign language, but is actually now translated into 4 other languages with native speakers, so that we can be providing distance learning to kids around the world who maybe aren't doing the normal summer things that they'd be doing right now. So as I look back, the one thing I didn't mention that is sort of amusing here is that I grew up as a piano player. I was never quite very good, but played for 14 years as a child, and actually majored in music composition in high school. And went to college and an MIT minored in music composition, and never really saw how the music side of my passions would one day blend in. As I said, I thought I was giving up sound waves for ocean waves when I became an ocean engineer. But now, 40 years into my existence, it's fun looking back and seeing how all of these disparate little parts of, be it art school, teaching in an art school, or learning to surf, or taking a music composition class, all of those skills come together, and sound has in many ways become one of the sandboxes that the Playful Learning Lab enjoys to be in most. And with that, I am done. If I do have, there is time, I believe, for some Q&A, but also a very sincere offer to all of you to follow up. If there are projects here that you find fascinating, I will put my cell phone number here. Or it's not my cell phone number, I'll put my email in the chat, and you are welcome to reach out. And if it's one of my students who would be better knowledgeable about the topic, I will put you in touch with them as well. Thank you all.
Thank you. We do have plenty of time for questions, and I didn't see any flashing through in the chat, but Keita might have something for us, but I'll let people take a moment to go ahead and post things in the chat. I guess my question is, well, under these, current situation that we're in, and you mentioned it a little bit at the end, but like, you have the 30-ish students that you're working with, the undergrads, but how has the working under the COVID pandemic situation? How has that changed, and what alterations have you had to make, and what's going on?
Yeah, you know, I am very detail oriented, which sometimes is a curse and sometimes is a blessing. And ever since H1N1, 10 years ago, I was actually pregnant with my second child, and my first child got H1N1. So I always have a plan in the back of my mind for teaching. And I am at a pretty teaching intensive school, as I suspect some of you are as well. This fall I'm teaching 6 courses actually. I've always had a plan for what I do if we have to move things online quickly. And I've always discussed it with my research students as well, hoping we'd never need to do it. But sure enough, this year we had to do this. And, you know, there's been there've been pros and cons. You also might have picked up that I'm in Minnesota. And as you know, we've had a very, very hard spring here. And, you know, my students, the gas station on our corner here was burnt down during the riots. And so my students have had a lot on their plate. And what we've found is, first of all, we have the ridiculous privilege in the lab. All of my students are paid. They are research students. It is through grants. It is through gifts, that we get to be the helpers. Mr. Rogers is one of my heroes, and we always say, look to the helpers. Well, we get to be those helpers. So we have always been very quick to respond to things, because I don't have PhD students. I don't have master's students. I have undergrads who will be gone in a year or 3. So we were able to shift pretty quickly. Zoom is incredible, and we've actually found that our research meetings are lovely because we can see everybody on Zoom. We did switch projects. I mean, as I mentioned, we unfortunately aren't filming with the band this summer as we would have been doing. And instead, we have been running a summer camp. And if I share my screen briefly, just in case any of you are parents or need activities for kids, playgroundcamp.org is one of our big projects. And again, it was intended for deaf children, and we deliver boxes of materials each week to deaf children. But we have, let's pick a week. We'll do nature and outdoors. Every week we post about 15 activities, and for any of the activities, if you go to them, we have lesson plans in English, Spanish, and Arabic, and actually soon the lesson plans will also be in Somali. But then we also have a video for kids walking them through this project in Arabic, Spanish, English, or American Sign Language. I will say this week is OK Go Sandbox week, so if you liked the OK Go videos that you saw, I'm a little embarrassed because we're having a little bit of a hiccup getting the proper ASL ones up this week. But if you go to some of our videos, here, we actually now have the captions in multiple languages for those Sandbox videos. Code and Chord, similarly, we did for Playground. So for us, COVID has been challenging, but it's also made us realize how important, our lab culture is. Again, we are a team of undergraduates who've got a lot of life going on right now, but we have 3 solid rules. You have to play well with others, you have to be kind, and you have to clean up your messes. And that sounds like kindergarten, but you can really accomplish a lot of work using those 3 rules. Clean up your messes is a lot of apologies. Like this week, our mess is that the sign language interpretations aren't up yet. We'll get them there. But other than that, my biggest sadness is not having our loud, boisterous students all in one room together. But it has forced us, on the other hand, to really think bigger and more internationally. I will say one other thing, if you are teachers, another project that we're running is the Playline, and I can share a link to this one, which is a daily Monday through Friday meetup. In the US, it's 9 Central, 9 to 9:30, of educators just discussing what they're doing with COVID and what they're doing online. A great community with a lot of music teachers, actually. We have a music education researcher from Italy who comes often. So in some ways, COVID has allowed us to open our world a little wider and collaborate more broadly. It's also allowed us to have the band for OK Go think differently. As Andrew mentioned, he was one of the attendees Tuesday night. OK Go did an hour-long Zoom meetup with 42 educators from around the world to discuss what they could do to help online learning. So we're trying to look at the positives as well as the challenges of the current pandemic situation. Long answer to an easy question, sorry.
No, that's great. It reminds me of one of the things that I think is keeping me going is trying to look at things that we're forced to do now that we can take beyond the pandemic situation. So like, you know, a lot of people are wanting things to go back to normal, but then like what comes after that or whatever. And so I'm trying to structure things in ways that things, you know, I can take things go on forward. So I think there's another new question in the chat.
Oh, that's an easy one, Russell. So the question is, yeah, you can pass any of our STEM information on to anybody. We really do love play. My lab's whole joy is meeting new people who want to do cool new projects and trying to make them happen. So truly, you can pass them on to anyone. I will invite all of you actually to an event too on August 14th. We are hosting a conference. We shouldn't call it. We're hosting a play date, the Playful Learning Lab called Playfest. And it is entirely online. Think of it as a conference, but it also has workshops, a bunch of short talks, and I will share that link as well. But it is a day-long event with speakers from around the world, researchers, scientists, artists, who will give 10-minute talks, and then a bunch of workshops. You can come learn to draw with a Disney Imagineer or chemistry. We're going to be talking through the science of food coloring with lollipops. Okay, there's a question. So Keita mentioned, how do students get to be in our lab? Student employment at our university here in University of St. Thomas, they can look at open positions, and maybe there's a position in the library or in the cafeteria or the Playful Learning Lab. We try for the most diverse group of interests and skills that we can go for. I think my favorite slide in that entire presentation I just gave, I'm just bringing it up again because it's such my favorite. As you can see, I mean, we are a fairly diverse crew of students, and every single one of them brings different experiences. Actually, 2 of them are music promotion majors. Quite a few of them major in languages, and they all bring different things to their work. And by that, they bring different things to every project we do.
Do their majors, I mean, I know you said they're very diverse majors, but do you find that the projects that they work on, or do you intentionally try to match the projects they work on with their majors, or how does that tie in?
You know, we usually hire for a specific project, but then the deal is if AnnMarie hires you, as long as you don't lie, cheat, or steal, you have a job until you graduate, as long as there is funding, and that hasn't been a problem yet, but one day it could be, so I have to put that caveat in. And I tell them that if they find that they don't love the project they're on, tell me which project looks interesting. And that's how we end up with engineering majors interpreting in Arabic, or we have English majors learning to code. I really do see our work as a co-curricular educational experience for students. So I want them to try new things. It's amazing how quickly your mindset narrows in college. If you are a computer science major as a sophomore, you suddenly think that you are less qualified to do music than the music major, but you only probably have a couple classes difference at that point. So I try to push bring in the group and everyone look at everything, and so far it has worked.
That's great. There's a long question here about music as communication and music sound visualization.
Oh, I could summarize this. So Raiko's question is about the music visualization, the Code and Chord project, and about how you're communicating things. So have we ever heard from an audience saying that their interpretation of feelings evoked from the music have a different color, size, or movement? Yes, absolutely. But usually we hear this, and thank you. I don't take it as a challenge to the project, but I will happily discuss the project, and we know, I mean, it's a starting point. Some of you might be familiar with the concept of synesthesia. So synesthesia is some people will see different colors for different pitches. Our software drives synesthetes crazy because it doesn't match their colors. In fact, one of my dream little side projects would be mapping specifically for each individual synesthete, because there's no uniform mapping, what their color sense is for a specific color, for a specific sound. I will say a criticism I have of the project that we admit to is also we're doing this through processing and Java. I think those 2 are the most, a little bit of Beats. It isn't always as fast to pick things up. So it's not a perfect, we don't have as quick and authentic of a visualization as I'd like. That's something we hope to play with in the future, maybe not. But yes, in terms of mood and emotion, it's challenging. We have some musicians that will not work with us on this project. I have a dream musician collaborator. Every year I pick 2 collaborators that are my dream collaborators, and I send them an email. And often I get blown off, but there's no yes if you don't ask. And one of the dream collaborators that I ping every year, he's probably sick of me, won't work on this project because he wants control over that. And this is a little too frightening in terms of what could be conveyed on the screen versus what their work is. Often we will work with artists to make sure that whatever the set of colors or shapes that we use are ones that they think work for their project. Like I mentioned, when we did the Dervish project, and I hope I'm pronouncing and covering these properly, we worked with some art historians to make sure that, for example, we didn't use any people images in that one, because that would have been offensive for the piece of specific music. On the other hand, we do some pieces. We did a piece with Cantus that was pictures of the band as kids, and those came in and out of focus based on, I think for them it was pitch and volume. So yes, there are a lot of ways this project can go wrong. Hopefully there's a lot of ways it can go right as well. But it really was a little experiment for us that we thought would be done in 5 weeks. And a couple years later, it's still finding uses in classrooms. We did a acapella festival with thousands of kids where they did workshops turning their songs into music, which was fascinating.
Very cool. Well, I'm so thrilled that you were able to share this with us, and thank you for doing that and being here as the first speaker in this International Year of Sound virtual speaker series. You know, we had to make an adjustment to our plans, and my wife was giving me a hard time earlier today about why this is the first one so late in and then she told me she was just messing with me because she knew there was, you know, reasons.
We're all adjusting this year.
Right, we're all adjusting, exactly. But this was so great, and thank you for sharing all the your contact information and all those websites. And like I said at the beginning, this will be up on the ASA website, or YouTube channel, I should say. And I'm sure we'll add the links to that as well, so that those are connected. So thank you again, and hopefully, you know, we could all, I don't know how you give applause to, I mean,
this is a good Zoom. One thing we have learned, I should say, that COVID has taught us is our work in the deaf community is really useful. So one thing we learned is this is applause, but we found this works really well if you have Zoom calls, if you're trying to talk to folks. I'm going to teach you, I'm going to end with a lesson. This is applause, but yes and no in sign language work really well, because then instead of everyone having to unmute when you're taking like a vote, if I ask, like, can you guys hear me? My students will do this. And I'm like, oh, okay, they can all hear me. They didn't need to unmute to do it. Or if they can't hear me. But I highly recommend, if you're going to be teaching online or doing a lot of meetings online, learn a couple signs. And a silly little plug is if you go to the Playground Camp page, our deaf friends actually did a ASL for Zoom video intro with like 5 signs that they thought were most useful for Zoom calls. So this is thank you. And I'm going to thank all of you so much for having me today.
Thank you. Yeah, it's so great. Thank you. Thanks everybody for coming. I appreciate it.